Well, it was not a good day for the Trump fanatics on the Republican-controlled House Judiciary Committee, and it was not a great day for their star witness, Republican former U.S. Attorney Robert Hur, who was appointed to as U.S. Attorney by Donald Trump, conducted the investigation of Joe Biden's possession of classified material after Joe Biden left the vice presidency. That investigation found that Joe Biden did not commit any crimes at all. And we learned today in the hearing that Robert Hur's report about Joe Biden was not accurate in its description of Joe Biden as an elderly man with unusual memory problems. And you'll remember that bit was the big news of that report, the news that was heard around the world about that report, and it is false. Today, Attorney General Merrick Garland released the full transcript of President Biden's 5 hours of under oath questioning by Robert Hur. In his report, Robert Hur claimed that President Biden could not remember when his son died. That is not true. In the transcript, President Biden says, "What month did Beau die? Oh, my God, May 30th. And then someone else in the room with the president says 2015, and President Biden says it was 2015. And it's now easy to understand Joe Biden's anger about Robert Hur's false characterization of the president's memory of that tragic day. Congressman Eric Swalwell, who will join us in a moment, found something else in the transcript released today of Joe Biden's testimony about Joe Biden's memory that Robert Hur deliberately did not include in his report describing the president's memory.
I now want to turn you to the transcript and day 1, page 47. You said to President Biden, "You appear to have a photographic understanding and recall of the House." Did you say that to President Biden?
Those words do appear on page 47 of the transcript.
Photographic is what you said. Is that right?
That word does appear on page 47 of the transcript.
Never appeared in your report, though. Is that correct? The word photographic?
That does not appear in my report.
Congressman Swalwell zeroed in on a possible motivation for Robert Hur to slant his report against Joe Biden in every way that he could.
A lot has changed since 2018 for the person who appointed you, former President Trump. Since you were appointed, he was impeached for leveraging 350 million U.S. taxpayer dollars over Ukraine to get dirt on President Biden. He was then impeached a second time for inciting an insurrection. He was charged for possessing classified documents and obstructing justice. He was charged for paying for the silence of a porn star. He was charged in Georgia for his role in January 6th. He was charged in the District of Columbia for his role in January 6th. He owes $400 million to the state of New York for defrauding the state through his taxes, and he has been judged a rapist. You want to be perceived, understandably, as credible, and so I want to first see if you will pledge to not accept an appointment from Donald Trump if he is elected again as president.
Congressman, I'm not here to testify
Seems like an easy
about
answer.
what will happen in the future.
Considering what I just laid out.
I'm here to talk about the report and the work that went into it.
But you don't want to be associated with that guy again, do you?
Congressman, I'm not here to offer any opinions about what may or may not happen in the future.
So it's fair to interpret that what you just saw obviously means that what may happen in the future is that Robert Hur would accept a federal judgeship from the indicted Donald Trump or serve as the indicted Donald Trump's attorney general. Republicans on the committee kept trying to suggest that Robert Hur would have recommended criminal charges against Joe Biden if President Biden were just younger, that it was simply Joe Biden's elderly, faulty memory that would make him hard to convict in a courtroom. But the truth of her report is that it does not at any point identify a single criminal act that could be prosecuted against anyone at any age. It did not identify a single thing Joe Biden did that anyone has ever been prosecuted for. And the only classified material that Joe Biden knew he possessed was exactly the same material that President Ronald Reagan kept when he left the presidency, and the Justice Department at that time believed that what President Reagan did was perfectly legal, and they justified it. President Ronald Reagan kept daily notes during his time in the White House, and Vice President Joe Biden kept similar daily notes during his 8 years as vice president. Those notes would inevitably contain possibly classified information. And those notes were deliberately kept by Joe Biden, following the legal precedent set by Ronald Reagan and the Justice Department when Ronald Reagan deliberately kept those same notes. And so the simple facts of the Biden case are there was no criminal prosecution because there was absolutely nothing that was even close to a criminal act. Democrats used the hearing today to remind America what it's like when the possession and handling of classified material is criminal.
In your investigation, did you find that President Biden directed his lawyer to lie to the FBI?
We identified no such evidence.
Did you find that President Biden directed his lawyer to destroy classified documents?
No.
Did you find that President Biden directed his personal assistant to move boxes of documents to hide them from the FBI?
No.
Did you find that President Biden directed his personal assistant to delete security camera footage after the FBI asked for that footage?
No.
Did you find that President Biden showed a classified map related to an ongoing military operation to a campaign aide who did not have clearance?
No.
Did you find that President Biden engaged in a conspiracy to obstruct justice?
No.
Did you find that President Biden engaged in a scheme to conceal?
No.
Each of the activities I just laid out describe what Donald Trump did in his willful mishandling of classified information and his criminal efforts to deceive the FBI.
Congresswoman Madeleine Dean, who will join us in a moment, forced Robert Hur to make the case against Donald Trump by reading what Hur's report says about the Trump case.
Unlike the evidence involving Mr. Biden, the allegations set forth in the indictment of Mr. Trump, if proven, would present serious aggravating facts.
Keep going.
Congresswoman, I'm happy to have you read the words in my report.
Well, it's your report, so I think it actually is more fitting that you read those.
Most notably, after being given multiple chances to return classified documents and avoid prosecution, Mr. Trump allegedly did the opposite.
Keep going.
According to the indictment, he not only refused to return the documents for many months, but he also obstructed justice by enlisting others to destroy evidence and then to lie about it.
And we have new information about Donald Trump's handling of government-owned documents and classified documents from the witness who Special Prosecutor Jack Smith's indictment identifies as Trump employee number 5. That employee, Brian Butler, said in a CNN interview that he helped Trump co-defendant Walt Nauta move some of the boxes from Florida to New Jersey.
We got to the airport. I ended up loading all the luggage I had, and he had a bunch of boxes.
You noticed that he had boxes?
Oh, yeah. They were the boxes that were in the indictment, the white banker's boxes. That's what I remember loading.
And did you have any idea at the time that there was potentially U.S. national security secrets in those boxes?
No clue. No, I had no clue.
Brian Butler explained why he is speaking out now publicly.
Well, I mean, it's been almost a year since FBI agents showed up at my house when my wife was at home. And, you know, over the course of the last year, emotionally, it's been a roller coaster. You know, a couple weeks ago, Judge Cannon says she's going to release the names of the witnesses. You know, you go from highs and lows in this. And instead of just waiting for it to just come out, I think it's better that I get to at least say what happened than it coming out in the news, people calling me like crazy. I'd rather just get it out there.
And Brian Butler offered this account of Donald Trump sharing classified information with an Australian billionaire.
I believe it was April of 2021. There was a member, Anthony Pratt, who he was coming, he flew in the night before.
He's an Australian billionaire.
He finishes his meeting with the former president, gets in the car, and his chief of staff says, "How did the meeting go?" Pratt, without saying, just says, "He told me," and it would be, U.S. military, classified information of what he told him about Russian submarines and U.S. submarines. And that's really all I remember hearing, and I went, what? I'm thinking this. I'm in the car, I'm like, did I just hear that? So it wasn't like, oh, the meeting went well, we talked about it. He went straight to the point. He told me that the U.S. subs and with the Russian subs and, something that would more than likely, in my mind, be classified.